Morning, this is a response to Professor Anton video Horrors in the Name of. We're talking here about the universe becoming conscious of itself. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about the sacred particularly. And kind of what I see as the application of theistic talk. Or maybe misrepresenting it, but that's kind of how I'm framing it for myself. Certain kinds of language to do with the sacred when you're talking about consciousness, the universe, life, morals, that kind of stuff. I think the position we're up to, the point we're up to with this right now is that is this idea of the sacred. And what I want to try and do is start with that and then segue into the idea of consciousness, because I think they tend to overlap, these terms. And the point I gestured towards in my last video was why I feel the word why I feel the word sacred is a term that carries a lot of baggage, and you have to be a little bit dubious about using. And I would suggest also careful about feeling. I think it's as I said in that series of videos, I think sacred is a feeling. I think it's something. It's a state. Where that originates is up to debate, but I think it's a state, and I think it is one that is worth watching. And the reason why I said that is because it's easily to be misguided by feelings, and as you rightly point out, Corey, people have killed and died in the name of the sacred. And what you say, which is absolutely true, I think, is that it's possible, if not inevitable, to detach violence and the activities carried out in the name of possibly the sacred from the sacred itself. But I think what became revealing there, and I don't want this to be a discussion about definitions, I really don't. What became evident there, I think, is about different kind of takes on the sacred, and who gets the, who has the right to define these things, I suppose. Because you used three terms, and you were talking about the sacred. You talked about reverence, awe, and respect. And that was kind of how you're viewing the sacred, which is kind of fine. Several things to say about that. Firstly, those three component parts of the sacred that you're identifying, reverence, awe, and respect, are not the same thing, of course. To revere something isn't the same thing as to be in awe of it, and to be in awe of something isn't the same thing as to respect something. So there is a structure to the sacred that you're talking about. And also, other people may have exactly the same sense of the sacred. It may feel the same way, but it might have other components. I can certainly think of some understandings of the sacred which contain things like humility, or abasement, or conversely power and authority, and the urge to dominate. There are other components beside the three that you specify, and I don't think any of us got the right to legislate what the sacred contains, but certainly to the extent that those components, the component parts of the sacred, lead to action, then obviously we have a little bit of a problem. Because if you are of a mind that your sense of the sacred gives you divine authority, or of a sense of the sacred empowers you with the right to dominate, or conversely with the right and the wish and this paper falling down, with the need to be subservient, then you've got a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. It's interesting. I think the three that you talk about, reverence, awe, and what was the third one? Reverence, awe, and respect. That's it. I mean, those are quite kind of passive components of the sacred. If you stand in awe of something, you're standing, and if you revere something, quite often that's a kind of passive position. And similarly, respect is often something that's held in silence. So I think there are more active components to the sacred which are perhaps absent from that. But that's I don't want to get into a discussion of terms. I think you're absolutely right. Okay, there's a little bit there about Matt's a comment I made on Matt's video. I don't want to get too much into something that's off topic, but he identified me as what he thought of as a kind of as theist, or at least not of the atheist persuasion. And I think it was important to set the record straight on that. I am absolutely of the atheist persuasion, which doesn't mean I'm not capable of entertaining other ideas. Entertain in the sense of hold, mutually embrace them and clasp them to my bosom for a while, but I can let them go. So I am of the atheist persuasion, and for all kinds of different reasons. And And your reading of Matt's comment, if I understand it correctly, was an unwillingness to identify with the universe. Matt seemed to be saying I had this relationship to the universe. I put him straight, I think, and said that doesn't represent my position. And then you seem to be saying that I don't have that capacity to identify with the universe. I do, of course I do. I mean, I think we probably all do. It's a capacity. I have most of the time I identify with myself, as I guess most of us do. But of course I'm capable of identifying with my family, my kin, my other members of my species, and on a good day with the entire universe, particularly under the influence of drugs. Yeah, but that's a capacity, isn't it? That doesn't mean to say I'm the universe any more than I am the skin cells that are constantly flaking off my body, or that I am a particular pattern of electronic, whatever it is, biochemical activity that's going on in my brain. You know, what the am is a different set of questions. But yeah, of course I'm capable of identifying with the universe. I just don't always see the point, really. Oh, it's an entertainment. I would regard it as an entertainment. I certainly wouldn't regard it as a moral or ethical standpoint. Okay, I've got some notes. Let me just see if I can check where I'm up to with this. The universe picking up branches. Oh yeah. This is actually a reference you made to another video I made called "The Universe Throwing Shit at Itself," which is this thing about, I was basically critiquing what I see as anthropocentric, egocentric, carbon chauvinistic viewpoint on consciousness, which said that the universe has become conscious of itself. Suddenly, the universe has woken up. And to be honest, I still think that's crap. And in that video, I said, well, if we're going to say that, then we'd have to say that the first time an elephant picked up a log with its nose, then suddenly the universe has picked up a log with its nose. And what you seem to be saying is, yes, we would have to say that. We would have to say that. The universe is throwing shit at itself every time a monkey throws feces across the cage. Or, the universe has suddenly been run over by a car every time someone gets run over, or the universe has accidentally dropped a pencil in the library. It reduces the agency to a point of triviality, I think. Or it generalizes agency out into a way that I just don't think is helpful. Or it's either not helpful, or it's deistic in a way that I don't really jive with, really. It's applying agency to... It's so general it becomes nonsense, in my reading of that. I think what you'd also do with that, and this is slightly more problematic, and I'm sure there's an answer for it, but I haven't found one yet, is I think if you're going to say that, you would also have to say, that the universe was in the cellar with what's it called, Joseph Fritzl. That was the universe having incest with itself, and killing itself, or if you'd have to say that all the atrocities that we're in agreement are probably bad things. That's the universe doing it to itself. It's the universe that carried out the Holocaust. It's the universe that shot Kennedy. That's the universe taking itself out. I don't know. I think it just leads to absurd positions and possibly politically strange positions. I would resist the idea that responsibility for action is deferred to the universe. Now, I may be misrepresenting you, but that just seemed to be the logic of where you were going with that. Never a thought independent of the entire universe. I think this comes out of a conversation or a statement you made about thought being inside your head. I don't know if thought's inside your head. I certainly wouldn't say exactly that. I have some sympathy with people like Vellman's work on how thinking works. I have a lot of sympathies for those kind of more autopoetic understandings of how thinking works. That doesn't mean to say the whole universe is involved. I don't think the whole universe is involved in everything I think. I'm pretty sure there's things happening in the office next door to where I'm making this video right now. And if they were happening in a different way, if Trevor, who's in the office next door to me, was doing something slightly different on his Mac, I don't think my thoughts would be different. I really don't. And if someone on the other side of the world was doing something, they chose to have manioc rather than flour in their bread today, I don't think my thoughts would be different. And if we want to talk about other planets, then we're somewhere else entirely. So no, there's never a thought independent of the entire universe. Yes, kind of, but it's I don't really think so. I think you're right about the social and cultural and the historicity thing. Of course, I couldn't have the kind of thoughts I'm having because without the social and cultural and the histories of my culture and my species, and I certainly couldn't have the kinds of consciousness without the longer historical reach of my species and evolutionary development more generally. I'm just looking at the time, it's 10:35, 10:36, I've got to wrap it up. There's so much more to say, Corey. Anyway, very interesting conversation. Yeah, nice stuff. I still have problems with the sacred. I understand it as a feeling. I apply it personally, judiciously. I understand identification with the universe. Again, I would apply that judiciously. I certainly wouldn't trust it as far as I could throw it. Thanks very much.